Hi, and welcome to Housing News with Amy C3. My name is Amy C3, and we have three amazing stories to go over tonight, starting with some investigative reporting done at The Intercept, looking at how Wall Street is planning to capitalize off of the impending eviction crisis. No surprise there. Let's go ahead and get started and get into a little bit more detail. Wall Street analysts are devising a plan with institutional investors to capitalize on the onslaught of evictions now postponed to October. According to investigative reporting at The Intercept, many of the largest investor-owned apartments have carefully tracked pandemic-related restrictions on landlords, preparing for a return to normal so that those late payments can be removed and rents can be increased. The push for profits comes despite the fact that many corporate landlords are roaring back and performing better than ever. Since a large portion of Wall Street firms have subsidiaries managing residential portfolios of rental properties, this gives them the green light to evict non-paying tenants once the moratorium on evictions is lifted. In this report by The Intercept, there were notes from a conference call with Matthew Ryan McGrainer, Chief Officer of NextPoint, that went into detail about what they plan to do with their non-paying tenants. Those units, he said, have been notified, evictions have been filed, and the company had teams prepared to go in and renovate to place the units back onto the market. On the bigger economic questions of how landlords might be harmed by a sudden influx of available rental units and renters from the end of the moratorium, McGrainer noted, quote, "Most institutional owners will not rent to a tenant that's been evicted for whatever reason and would be going to apartments that are, quote, lower quality." But that's the problem. Part of the market scheme is to buy up any available stock that's currently on the market, especially if these units are bank-owned or real estate-owned, or REOs. That will be renovated and moved to the Wall Street-dominated asset class. Also, that is exclusionary to previously evicted tenants, limiting their housing options altogether. They acknowledge that this will inevitably force evicted tenants into substandard housing. Plus, Wall Street landlords aren't just looking to capitalize from evictions in their own rental properties. They're gearing up to acquire all of the mom-and-pop owned properties and single-family homes that move to foreclosure. When COVID initially hit, Wall Street entities quickly moved in to purchase any vacant housing on the market last spring when the Fed dropped the interest rates down to zero, those quick grabs foreshadowing their current success within the asset class today. Institutional investors' publicly traded real estate investment trusts, or REITs, have yielded record high earnings per share this year. They have secured more than enough capital to secure larger shares of the rental market by locking in on impending foreclosures coinciding with the looming housing crisis. That includes the eviction crisis as well. It bears repeating that there has been a serious delay in the $46 billion worth of emergency rental assistance getting out on time to the applicants who've requested the aid. The moratorium's abrupt ending right now would no doubt benefit institutional investors the most. But for the smaller landlords who are also at the mercy of emergency rental assistance money that's taken a long time to be distributed, they may move to foreclosure while their application is pending, giving these Wall Street firms an opportunity to move in on those investment properties at a banco discount. Which really makes you think if the Daily Poster was onto something with their recent report that Democrats received a $7-figure contribution from real estate tycoon George Marcus. George Marcus is the founder of Essex Property Trust and chairman of real estate brokerage Marcus & Millichamp. Marcus's donations includes $1 million to the House Majority PAC and over $250,000 to a joint fundraising committee benefiting Nancy Pelosi and the DCCC. Surely the Democrats couldn't be making top-down decisions that benefit the asset class during this time of a public health crisis, causing millions of people to be on the brink of homelessness. Are they really that corrupt? Do they really respond more positively to million-dollar briberies that result in the misery of the working-class Americans who merely don't have the wealth or the power or the accolades to persuade top Democratic leadership to give a shit about them? Let's take a look at campaign finance data from BlackRock, former employer of Vice President Kamala Harris's top economic advisor, Mike Pyle. Hedge your bets, people. Who do you think BlackRock donates more money to? The Democratic Party or the Republican Party? If you guessed the Democratic Party by a wide margin, you are correct. Turns out BlackRock gives a lot more money to the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. I think this is rather evident that, yes, a lot of dark money is funneled into Democratic campaigns, into the party in general. And perhaps there is something to this story about all of that money going into the Democratic Party on June 1st, which might have been the reason why the eviction moratorium was originally going to expire. Without knowing that progressive Democrats were going to vehemently fight back, perhaps Democrats in leadership positions weren't necessarily prepared for the pushback and were just planning to let the moratorium expire by August 1st. Who knows? All we do know is that there is something my brain is in recovery mode. I need to put my brain into recovery mode with all of this high-level data. Let's move it to the local level to see what's happening on the ground in Durham, North Carolina. As the threat of evictions hovers over the country, local officials in Durham, North Carolina are addressing inadequate tenant rights in their jurisdictions. Durham City Council member Deanna Freeman introduced a resolution intended to protect tenants during the council work session on Thursday. Freeman, who represents the city's Ward 1, presented the Tenants' Bill of Rights, a document drafted by the Bull City Tenants United. When speaking with local publication Indie Week, the councilwoman pointed to struggling families across the city who, in addition to the pressures of a general housing market, are finding it even more challenging to keep a roof over their heads in the face of gentrification, the pandemic, and just plain old poverty. Adding that those most in need of support with the eviction moratorium are low-income residents and people of color. Freeman explained Wednesday that an up or down vote on the issue won't take place until the next work session on August 19th. If the resolution passes, then it will be placed on the agenda of the City Council's next regularly scheduled meeting on September 7th. The Bull City Tenants United released points to an analysis in the New York Times which found that 15% of renting households in Durham owe an average of $3,399 in back rent. That comes out to over $22.5 million needed to mitigate the immediate effects of the pandemic on Durham renters. BCTU says that, as a response to the current crisis and moving forward, the Tenants' Bill of Rights would guarantee a baseline of dignified tenant housing in Durham, including requiring all rental units to meet basic health and safety standards, undergo regular inspections, and receive timely repairs. It would also give tenants the right to stay and not be displaced, the right to collectively bargain, and many more protections for renters. I don't want to get too excited, but it seems like we're really starting to see a slight change in the makeup of our local governing bodies, with agents of change offering that additional layer of rental protections that members of Congress might have been paid to strip away. Nancy Pelosi doesn't have to respond to evictions, but City Council does. Local activists like India Walton, Nithya Raman, and Kshama Shawant, they have decided to run for office as leaders of their community representing the interests of their constituents. Their fight is rooted in their acknowledgement of class struggle. They use their positions of power to antagonize the corporate ruling class instead of their voting bloc. I really hope to see more activists take on these positions and be the agents of change that we need to see in every single community it looks like we're making some progress, but there's always room for a little more. And I hope that those who are taking on these roles are also helping to motivate others so that we start to see real representation from local leaders instead of our corporate-backed leaders that we tend to see even at the local level. That being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up for the night. Thank you so much for joining, and this has been another episode of Housing News with Amy C3. We'll see you next time.